Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you are coming into class today feeling well prepared or at least well equipped. You went through the homework and everything went well. But I'm going to go ahead and try to briefly go through these problems. You know, if there was any problem set that I feel like was a good one to start you off with, this is it. Because it really started with some basic concepts. And so it wasn't like these crazy word problems that were hard to understand. These were pretty straightforward. And so I'm just going to dive right in. Hopefully you have your homework out and you can kind of follow along, see what you did right, see what you did wrong. Obviously, all the odds were in the back of the book. I'm not there and present to see who needs to see which, so I'm just going to try to zip right through them. Okay, so for this first one, it said the sum of two integers is 55. Let's see, the sum of two integers is 55, and their product is 684. And it says, what are the integers? So you just say, well, x is the first one. X is the first integer. Not that one is larger or, smaller than the other one. And then the second one would be 55 minus x. And if you're wondering where we got that, it's all about the fact that that 55 is the sum or the total. So it goes back to that idea of having $10 sitting on a desk. If I say one of it is mine, then 9 belongs to someone else. And we get that by taking the total and subtracting the first value. Okay? And so we've got these two. X is the first integer, 55 minus x is the second. And then we're told that the product is 684. So then I just have to take these two and multiply them. So it's a x times 55 minus x results in the product of 684. Now, that's it. You're done. That's the setting up of the equation. Here on out, it's a basic quadratic equation. And so I'm going to go ahead and distribute, and that's going to get me 55x minus x squared is equal to 684. Now, I really don't care to have this squared term be negative, so I'm going to push everything to the other side. And so that's going to make this say x squared minus 55x plus 684, because when I push it over there, 684 was already positive, all equals 0. Now, this, you could think about the different ways we could do this. We could factor this, if you know the factors of 684 that add up to be negative 55. I don't. We could complete the square. Now, this is not an ideal situation for completing the square because this b value is odd. Not that that's the worst thing in the world, but when the b value is odd, we have to cut it in half and then square that. And so we're going to get a fraction that then we have to square the fraction and add it to both sides. So it just kind of starts getting a little bit ugly. So at this point, what would make the most sense is to use the quadratic formula. And so I'm going to say, well, I know that x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And so that would mean that x is equal to negative b, so that would be 55, plus or minus the square root of 55 squared. What is that, 3025, I think? 3025 minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c. So 4 times c, that's going to be 4 times 600 is 2400. 4 times 80 is 320, so that's 2720 times 4, 2736. 2736. All over 2a, which is just 2. Okay, so we get x is equal to 55 plus or minus the square root of. Now we go ahead and subtract these. What's the difference between 3025 and 2736? What do we got? 264 plus 25 more gets a 289. All over 2. And so then if we go to solve that, the square root of 289 is 17. So I get 55 plus or minus 17 all over 2. And so I think about what would this be? 55 plus 17 would be 72. So that means my values could be, I could have 72 over 2. Or 55 minus 17 would be what? 38 over 2. And then at this point, I can just simplify that and go, well, 72 divided by 2 is 36. 38 divided by 2 is 19. And a quick check is to go, do these two numbers add up and give me the 55 that they're supposed to? And they do. 36 plus 19 is 55. So this makes sense. And then I can multiply them, and 36 times 19 does give me that 684 it's supposed to. So those are my two values. All right, number 80. It says, now we're dealing with two consecutive integers. So not just some random integers, one is one value, one is a completely different value, but these are consecutive integers. And so what that means is, that means that one is right after the other one in terms of even values. So we could say that x is the first, but that would mean that x plus 2 is the second. Okay, they're consecutive even integers. If it was consecutive integers, it'd be x and x plus 1. But they're even integers, so they're two integers apart. So we got that. And then we know that the product of the squares, it's really easy to miss that. We can think that the product is 1252, but the product of the squares. So that would mean that x squared plus x plus 2 squared equals 1252. You got to simplify this. Remember not to ruin this part right here. You got to simplify that the right way. People always want to somehow just slip in and go, well, it's just x squared and it's 2 squared. You can't distribute like that. You have to FOIL it out. And so this becomes x squared plus x plus 2 times x plus 2 all equals 1252. And then at this point, I FOIL first, outer, inner, last. So I get x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4 equals 1252. Now, the whole point when I'm using the quadratic formula or looking at quadratic equations, I want to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to move everything to one side. And so I've got 2x squared plus 4x, let's see here, minus 1248 equals 0. Easiest thing to do at this point is just go ahead and divide everything by 2. Makes it a little bit simpler. X squared plus 2x minus 624 equals 0. Okay? And so now, basically, I'm looking for two values that multiply together, give me negative 624, but when I add them together, I get positive 2. And I don't know what those are off the top of my head, but I could use completing the square. I could also use quadratic formula, but I'm a big fan of completing the square. So that's what I'm going to do on this one. So I'm going to say, well, I know that x squared plus 2x equals, and I'm push that 624 to the other side. Half of 2 is 1, square it, and I get 1. So I have to add 1 to this side as well. So I get x plus 1 squared is equal to 625. I square root both sides. I get x plus 1 is equal to the plus or minus square root of 625, which is the plus or minus 25. 25 times 25 is 625. So at this point, I get x plus 1 is equal to plus or minus 25. So that means I go ahead and subtract 1 from both sides. I get x is equal to 25 minus 1, or it's negative 25 minus 1. Okay, so 25 minus 1 would be 24, and negative 25 minus 1 would be negative 26. All right, now that's just my first value. It said I need to come up with both values. So x is the first and x plus 2 is the second. So that would mean that my values are 24 and 26, or negative 26 and negative 24. Okay, and why did I get two different sets of values? Well, because when I square it, these negatives would become positive, and so they could still sum that 1252. And they're consecutive even integers. All right, so hopefully this made sense to you. You could square 24 and you could square 26, add them together, and you're going to get 1252. All right, number 81. Now, I love these kind of problems because these are basic. This is area of a rectangle. Everybody knows how to do area of a rectangle. This is not a complicated problem, so don't let it be complicated. It says that one side is 10 feet longer than the width. Okay, so basically we go, well, what do we got? We'll say W is the width. A little bit close. Okay, W is the width. And therefore, W plus 10 is the length. It's 10 feet longer. And the total area is 875. So that means the width times the length is 875. So we just multiply these two. W times W plus 10 equals 875. At this point, you can distribute. You get W squared plus 10W equals 875. When we're doing quadratics, typically we move everything over to one side. But I'm going to go ahead and complete the square on this one. So I'm going to leave it over there, and I'm going to say W squared plus 10W equals 875. Now, half of 10 is 5. 5 squared is 25. So I got to add 25 to this side, add 25 to this side, and I get W plus 5 squared is equal to 900. 875 plus 25 is 900. Square root both sides. And the square root of 900 is 30. So I get W plus 5 is equal to plus or minus 30. Subtract 5 from both sides, and W is equal to 30 minus 5, which is 25. Or W is equal to negative 30 minus 5, which is negative 35. Now, one of these answers I should kick out right away. And that, of course, would be the negative value. Now, I have nothing against negative values, but in this case, we're not going to have the negative width of a room. That doesn't make any sense. So we say, well, I know the length or the width of the room is 25. We feel good about that, but we were supposed to come up with both dimensions. The length is 10 feet more. So that means the room is 25 by 35. And if you multiply those two numbers together, you will get 875, the area. Okay? Moving on. Okay, exact same problem, but this time, I guess, that was a garden, wasn't it? I'm sorry, that wasn't a room. But so number 82 is the exact same problem, literally the exact same problem. They just changed how much longer one is and what the area is. So you go, okay, W is the width, W plus 7 is the length, and the area is 228. So W times W plus 7 is equal to 228. So you get W squared plus 7W equals 228. Now, I'm a big sissy, and I go, that W value there, 7, that's an odd number. If I cut that in half and square it, it's going to get kind of ugly. So I'm going to go ahead and use the quadratic formula, but to do that, I want to move everything over to one side. So I have W squared plus 7W minus 228 is equal to 0. And then at this point, I can say, well, X equals, or W equals, negative B, so that's negative 7, plus or minus the square root of B squared, that's 49, minus 4AC. Now, 4 times 1 is 4 times C. 4 times 228 is, what is that, 912? But it's a positive or negative, so you change that sign, and it looks like that. All over 2. 2a, which is 2 in this case. So you get negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 and 912. What is that? That's 961. 961, which is 31 squared. Okay, and so therefore, I know that X is equal to negative 7 plus or minus 31 over 2. And so I can then simplify this, say negative 7 plus 31 would be 24 over 2, or 12. And negative 7 minus 31 would be negative 38 over 2, which is negative 19. And again, I'm going to look and go, okay, I'm going to kick out this value right away. Go, that one doesn't work. Why not? Because it's negative, and I can't have a negative dimension. So how big's the room? Because that I always got to answer the question. And the dimensions of the room are 12 by 19, because we know that it is 7 feet longer than it is wide. And we found the width. The width was 12, so the length is 19. 12 by 19. Okay, this was a little bit, they finally put a little bit of a twist on it. Now we're dealing with an amount of fence going around a garden. So the amount of fence would go around the perimeter. So we have to be at least a little bit aware of the formula of perimeter. You know, that perimeter is always equal to 2 lengths plus 2 widths. Okay, let's see here. And then they give us the area is 2,400 square feet. And so let's see here. What do we know? 200 feet of fence. Is there anything else that we're, hang on, let me just double check that we're not missing anything from the problem. Farmer has a rectangular garden plot surrounded by 200 feet of fence. Find the length and width of the garden if it's 2,400 feet area. Okay, 2,400 square feet. Okay, sounds good. So what we're going to do with this one is we've got this limited amount of fence that we've got to, this number is the perimeter. Okay, we don't know the length and we don't know the width, but we do know the perimeter and we do know the area. Okay, and we know that area in this case is equal to length times width. So we've got a couple different things going on here. All right, we know what the perimeter is, we know what the area is, and so basically from that we should be able to just kind of use the substitution method and solve one of these for one of the variables. Honestly, I think the easiest thing to do would be to kind of use this one right here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I know the area is 2,400. And that is the length times the width. And then what I can do is just divide both sides by one of those variables. I'm going to divide both sides by length. Okay? And that means the width is equal to 2,400 divided by the length. And if I do this now, I can take this value and plug it in for the width. And I could say, well, the perimeter, which is 2,400, is equal to 2 of the lengths plus 2 of the width. And the width we're saying is 2400 divided by length. And so I get 2400 is equal to 2 lengths plus 2 times 2400 is going to be 4800 over the length. Now this becomes pretty ugly at this point because we got this L in the denominator, and so you go, and also I don't see this being a quadratic. But to make this a quadratic, I'd go and multiply everything by L. And if I multiply everything by L, I'd get 2400L equals 2L squared plus 4800. Now the fraction goes away, and this looks a whole lot better. At this point, move everything to one side, and I could say it's 2L squared. 2L squared, and then I'm going to subtract the 2400L from both sides, plus the 4800 equals 0. And what do we want to do here? We can complete the square, but these values are pretty huge. I can divide everything by 2 and get L squared minus 1200L plus 2400. Those are still pretty big values. But it really doesn't matter. Either complete the square or not, it's all going to kind of come out to be the same. So I'll complete the square. And I'll get L squared minus 1200L equals negative 2400. You take 1200, cut it in half, you get 600. Square that. 600 times 600. Well, it's got 4 zeros with a 36 in front of it. So it'd be plus 36. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 360,000. Oh, man, this is getting pretty big. 360,000. Oh, and a calculator out of my reach. Okay, so when doing this, I know that this simplifies down to L minus 600 quantity squared is equal to some enormous value. Yuck. And who knows, maybe I'm doing this wrong. But I get 357,600. Okay. And then you got to square root both sides. You get L minus 600 is equal to the square root of this big mess. We'll see. Maybe I'm botching this problem. All right. Got to grab a calculator. Hang on one second. Okay. And I'm sure everybody's laughing at the fact that I might have this completely wrong, but we'll check. Okay, so I'm going to plug in 357,600 into my calculator and take the square root of it, and I do not get a pretty number. So clearly I made a mistake somewhere. Okay, so let's see, where in the world is that mistake? Because I know that this comes out to be pretty clean values. So where is it? Area 24, 248. 2L squared, yeah, equals 48, 24L. Subtract that, divide everything. I feel pretty good. 360,000. Yeah, I get some pretty ugly values. I get that it's really close to 598, but that it's not. And so I don't know exactly what I did wrong here. And maybe you guys can see my mistake and I'm not. Yesterday I made a mistake on the problem and someone caught it. I just made some small addition or subtraction errors somewhere amongst the problem. I don't see it where it is in this one. Okay, so I know that could be discouraging and disappointing. I'm sorry. I am far, 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 far from perfect. Okay. And so something happened with my values getting way too big. Oh, do you guys see it? Oh, you probably see it. Look what I did. Everybody see it? Man, you guys probably made fun of me a long time ago. Man, I put the 2400 where the perimeter is supposed to be. The perimeter is 200. That's why the values got out of control and crazy big. Okay, my bad. So that's going to ruin a bunch of things. So that I got to track that along. That changes this right here. Okay, good news, good news. So that's no longer 2400L. That should only be 200L. Big difference there. So I'm going to just erase it right here and go, okay, that's supposed to be 200L. Then when I divide everything by 2, that just simply becomes 100L. Makes way more sense. My values aren't so insanely huge. Get rid of this. So I got 100L. Get rid of this because I'm not going to add 360,000 to both sides. Okay, so half of negative 100 is 50, square 50, and I get 2,500. So I'm going to add 2,500 to both sides. That makes way more sense. Let's keep erasing. All right, all of this has got to go. Okay, now, what do I have? I get L minus 50 quantity squared equals, now negative 2,400 plus 2,500 is 100. And I got to square root both sides. So I get L minus 50 is equal to the square root of 100, or the plus or minus square root. And so therefore, L minus 50 is equal to 10, or L minus 50 is equal to negative 10. Now, you add 50 to both sides, and you get L is equal to 60 or 40. And so what this is saying is that either the length is 60 and the width is 40, or the length is 40 and the width is 60. But either way, I know it is 60 by 40. I'm sorry for my comedy of errors making that mistake there. It was good that I was able to look back through and go, what in the world happened? So the garden is 60 by 40. And that clearly makes sense because 60 plus 40 is 100. Double that, we get 200. So the perimeter all the way around, 200. And 60 times 40 is 2,400. So that makes sense. All right. Sorry about that. Let's do this one. This one, man, talk about an easy problem. And watch, I'll botch it as well. But I look at this problem and go, okay, you got to cut this weird shape into either a short rectangle up here and a long, wide rectangle down here, or you cut this so that it is a long, tall rectangle right here and a short, stubby rectangle right here, or you really do both and you cut it right here and there. And look what happens if I cut it right here. Remember, area is just you multiply the length times width. So for this one, I would multiply length times width, and I get 14x. For this one, I multiply length and width, and I get 13x. And for this last one, I go length and width, and that just becomes x squared. And so this is so easy. And then I just add it all up and set it equal to that one. And so I say, well, x squared plus 14x plus 13x plus... No, sorry, not plus, but equals 160. So that is to say that x squared plus 27x minus 160 equals 0. I'm not going to use completing the square because I have that odd value in the middle, and I'm a big sissy about that. And so I'm just going to use the quadratic formula and say x is equal to negative b, that's negative 27, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Now 27 squared is what, 729? Minus 4 times a times c. Well, 4 times negative 160 is going to be negative 640. That's going to change that sign. Looks like that. All over 2a, which is just 2 in this circumstance. Okay. So I get x is equal to negative 27 plus or minus the square root of 729 plus 640 is what, 1369? 1369 all over 2. So I get x is equal to negative 27 plus or minus the square root of 1369. What's the square root of 1369? We'll see. The square 35 squared is 1225, so it's got to be bigger than 35. 40 squared is 1600, so it's got to be smaller, and it ends in a 9. Well, 7 times 7 is 49, so the square root of that must be 37. All right? I don't know if anybody followed that logic, but I'm guessing if I plug it into a calculator, I get 37. Divided by 2. So what does that mean? Negative 27 plus 37 would give me 10. Divided by 2, or negative 27 minus 37 would give me negative 64 divided by 2. So that would mean my two values are either 5 and or negative 32. Now, of course, I kick out this value. I don't like that because we're talking about dimensions. I have nothing against negative numbers, but in this case, to have a negative dimension is not going to work. All right, we're just about there. Okay, let's take a look at 85. 85 is a real simple problem, almost identical. We just got to know the area of a triangle. And the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So that's this part right here. And the other one is a rectangle. So in the area of the rectangle is just base times height. So then you want your total area. I'm going to do A sub t for total area. And you get 1/2 base times height plus base times height. And so then let's see what that is. 1/2, well, the base and height of the rectangle, or sorry, the triangle is x and x. The base and height of the rectangle is 1 and x. And we know that the total area is 1200. Let's not make a mistake again on that one. Okay? And so then there's my problem. I can simplify that a little bit so that it says 1200 is equal to 1/2 x squared plus 1x. Now, again, I think it's worthwhile just to go ahead and get rid of that fraction to make it a little bit easier on myself. So I'm going to go through and multiply everything by 2 and get 2400 is equal to x squared plus 2x. Push everything to one side, x squared plus 2x minus 2400 equals 0. I can do this by completing the square and say, I just want to make sure, did I make a mistake again? I'm sure I did. Go ahead and say, well, I'm going to go x squared plus 2x equals 2400. Half of 2 is 1. Add 1 to this side, add 1 to this side. Okay. There we go. And so I get x plus 1 squared is equal to, not the square root of, but is equal to 2401. Square root both sides, I get x plus 1 is equal to the plus or minus square root of 2401, which is 49. Go ahead and subtract 1 from both sides, and you get either it is 48 or negative 50. Now again, we're dealing with dimensions, so we can't have a negative value, so this one does not make sense. So we go, in this circumstance, x has got to be 48. Okay. All right, almost done. 2 problems to go. And I think these were the easiest 2, honestly, on the page. It's amazing how simple these are. They're actually not really even quadratics. They just deal with some values. So I would look at this and say, I've got this square. My goal is to find out the value right here. But I think to label that x, that's a bad idea. I think that's just going to make this harder. So what I do is I go, let's say that this part right here is x. Because we know that this is 4, and that would mean that this part right here is x, and this is 4, and so on, all the way around. And so when I fold this box up, and I'm going to make a really bad drawing of that right now, okay, but when I fold this box up, and it looks something like that, oof, it's getting bad. Then we know it's going to look like this. We know it's 4 units tall, and this would be x by x. If you don't know, the volume of a box is you take the area of the base and you just multiply by the height. And so the area of the base of this thing is just going to be x times x. That's going to be the base. And then you multiply by the height. So the volume of this box is base times height times width, or base times width times height, whatever. And so for this one, you go, that would be x times the height, which in this case is 4. So the volume is just equal to 4x squared. But we know the volume is 100 cubic inches. So we just plug that in right here. And we get 100 is equal to 4x squared. Now this gets so easy. Divide both sides by 4, and 25 is x squared. Square root both sides. X is either equal to plus or minus 5. Now, it can't be a negative 5. We're doing dimensions. So what does that tell me? That x has got to be 5. That's real simple, but that doesn't answer the question. And it's always important that you answer the question. The question was, what were the dimensions of that piece of cardboard? And the whole thing, if you got 4 up here, 4 down here, and 5 in the middle, 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 4 more is 13. So this whole thing has got to be 13 by 13. That's important. Don't stop with this and feel like you've made it. All right, and lastly, this other one is almost identical in terms of how easy it is and simple it is. If you don't know, to find the volume of a cylinder, you find the area of the base, and again, you multiply it by the height. Okay, the area of a circle is pi r squared. In this case, it's asking for the diameter, but we use radius when we're trying to find the area. So I'm just going to say, let's go ahead and try to find that radius. And once we have that, we'll then make adaptations to figure out what the diameter is. So I know that this is the area of my circle. The volume is going to be equal to pi r squared times the height. And I know my height. And I know my volume. So I go 40 pi is equal to pi r squared times the height of 10. So that means that 40 pi is equal to 10 pi r squared. Now look how easy this is. Divide both sides by pi. Those cancel out. Divide both sides by 10. That cancels out. And so then at this point, I'm left with 4 is equal to r squared. Oh my goodness. Square root both sides, and you get that r is equal to plus or minus 2. Can't have a negative 2 because I'm doing dimensions. So the radius is 2. But that wasn't the question. The question was, what is the diameter? So then, of course, the diameter is 4. That's the answer to the question. All right, hopefully you got these. I feel like these are pretty straightforward and simple problems. We're going to look at one more type of problem, and that is those gravity problems that we talked about as you're getting ready to do those. All right, thank you very much.